in general, the recommended ranges have changed to accommodate the declines. So, for example, like per mil of ejaculate, what number is considered normal for the amount of sperm is, well, the World Health Organization say 15 million sperm is okay. But that's not okay, because we know from the research that it takes an average of 55 million sperm to get a fertilization, right? So normal is not always optimal. It simply means average.
On this week's podcast episode, I talk with naturopath and fertility expert Emma Sutherland about the importance of healthy male fertility. We talk about the scary decline in men's fertility numbers, the toxicity of the world we live in today, trimester zero when it comes to men, getting your sperm count checked, detoxing, and much, much more. Enjoy the episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Momentum Lifestyle Podcast by myself, Blake Worrell-Thompson.
And me, Genoa Van Keekum. Momentum is a men's wellbeing and performance community dedicated to helping men be better.
Each week, we deep dive with your favourite thought leaders and experts from around the world to get their insights to help you be better. Enjoy the episode. Emma Sutherland, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Blake. Awesome to be here.
Guys, for those of you who don't know, which is just about be every single one of you, Emma and I go way back. In fact, we go way back well beyond any other guests that I've had. How many years ago was that we were just rocking out TV shows?
That was about 12 years ago, because my daughter's 11, actually almost 13, I believe. Yes, we were young. We were babies ourselves.
We've changed a fair bit in 13 years. And before we talk all things fertility, testosterone, swimmers, and when I talk swimmers, we're talking male sperm as opposed to swimmers. Can you give the guys a 60 to 90 second spiel of who you are and what's got you to where you are today?
Yeah, totally. Thanks so much. There's a lot that got to me where I am today, but I grew up with a family that was all very a la natural. Our GP was also a herbalist, so I just grew up thinking everyone took echinacea, vitamin C in winter. Had no idea that the rest of the world was not like me, but always gravitated towards that, more natural lifestyle. And then it wasn't until I traveled a lot in my early 20s, and then it wasn't until I was about 26 that I realized there was this thing called naturopathic medicine, and that was the thing I wanted to sort of jump into and dive. So then I spent 4 years doing a double degree, came out with that and went, right, bring it on. This is what I want to do. Initially, I was doing a lot of general naturopathic work. I went straight to clinical practice because I just wanted to dive in the deep end and really cut my teeth by seeing a lot of patients pretty early, but then really sort of evolved my practice and worked more towards women's health. I have a love for pediatrics, working with kids, but I really love this whole concept of women getting their mojo back in life and feeling really good within themselves. And that, of course, encompasses hormones, fertility, preconception, and that, of course, brings in that whole male fertility and male health side of things, because it's 50% of the DNA. So now I'm in clinical practice 4 days a week. I also am a host of a podcast, FX Medicine, that takes up a little bit of about a day a week. And I'm also on a couple of boards as well. So it's great because there's so much fun diversity in what I do.
That was a beautiful intro. So you spoke of women's mojo, which is a big part of this fertility, sex, kids pocket that we want to talk about today.
Yeah.
And the first thing that I want to go into, which you and I think we spoke about this briefly last time when we were having a bit of a chat offline. It's fucking scary, but the current run rate for male fertility or male sperm is that it will be zero by the time that 2050 comes around. What is going on and how do we turn this around quickly?
Yeah, look, there is no quick answer because we have to sort of take a step back and look at a bit of the history around it. Like that decline in male fertility, it's, also associated with advanced age. Men are having babies older, and it does make a difference on age. Diet and lifestyles have changed a lot. Our environment's changed a lot. There was a 2020 paper that came out. The projection of Australia's future fertility rates was the name of the report. And in 1961, the average number of babies per family was 3.55. And now it was dropped down to 1.74. And there's many reasons why people are having less babies. But one of them is that it's harder to have a baby now. And, male health, the focus is always on like testosterone and muscle and all of that, but it's not on sperm health. And essentially, fertility is not just about conceiving and making a baby. Like, it's about creating this super healthy human. And, your cellular health, your DNA integrity really helps to shape that future child's life. A lot of the research and the stats that we're going to talk about are coming from a 2017 study that researchers analysed information from 185 studies. So this was a huge pool of data. It covered nearly 43,000 men and found that sperm counts and concentration have declined year after year, and they've dropped by more than 50% for men in Western countries. Average sperm counts have dropped 59% between 1973 and 2011. Now, as you said, that is frightening. It also showed that men in Western countries had a 52% drop in sperm concentration. So the numbers, so how many sperm per ejaculate and per mil was 99 million, it was, and it's down to 47 million per mil. So that's a huge drop in the number of sperm being produced. And also that total sperm count, like how much are you producing in total? That number went from 337 million down to 137 million. Now, this is per ejaculate. That's a 59% decrease in total sperm count. So this is not only frightening, I can't believe more people aren't talking about this, that more people aren't aware of this. And I really love that we are going to highlight and discuss this today, because if we don't do something different, the future's looking pretty grim.
You summed up very well. Very grim. Like, it seems a pretty simple equation. If there's no sperm, there's no humans, if we really want to simplify it. So,
absolutely. Yes.
There's been a number of really good books. I've read a couple. I think one's called Countdown and the other one, I can't remember what it was, on sperm, which was really interesting. And they talk about all the different factors from EMFs to plastics to, just general health. But if you were to summarize it as best you can, what do you think are the biggest things that are impacting male sperm health and male sperm count?
I think it is so multifactorial. I think the amount of toxins we're exposed to is ubiquitous. We don't understand that we are living in a toxic soup. And I don't want to alarm people and kind of, sound too out there. But the fact is that our physiology hasn't really evolved a lot over the last few thousand years, right? So back in caveman days, cavewoman days, a lot of our physiology and the biochemical reactions that we have in our bodies, our enzyme levels, haven't changed a lot. But the single common denominator that has changed enormously is our environment, which is our diet and our lifestyle and what we're surrounded by. So I almost feel that our evolutionary genes haven't been able to keep up with the changes in our environment, diet, and lifestyle in a way that's cohesive with fertility. From the water we drink to the air we breathe to the food we eat to the products we put on our skin, everything comes bucketed with chemicals unless we choose otherwise, right? And often when I'm having this conversation with couples, their eyes start getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I can see they're sitting there thinking, well, shit, I can't go and live in a bubble. Like, how am I going to address this? And I think the first step for me is always, getting some blood tests done and working out where their nutrition is. But most importantly for the man is getting a sperm analysis done, right? So that we can actually deep dive into where his state of health is from a sperm perspective. And I always kind of think about a sperm analysis is just a health check, like you go and get blood tests, like you go and get a skin check or your eyes check or whatever it might be. It's just a health check. And it provides this really amazing opportunity to have a look at what's going on the inside, the things you can't see, and have a look and see what could be optimized. The most awesome thing about sperm is that every 96 days, there's new sperm produced, right? Sperm has a lifespan of 96 days. So it's so much easier to optimize sperm health than it is to optimize a woman's egg health, right? So there is a golden opportunity in this for men to optimize their sperm health rather than waiting until maybe they've been actively trying to conceive for 12 months and they're both stressed and the woman's been tracking and the man feels like he's a sperm donor and they're like fighting. And no, do your sperm test ahead of time, like part of that, like trimester 0, like before preconception. I always recommend getting sperm testing done. And, you know, you can either go to your GP and get a sperm analysis done. Can I please tell you some little hacks you need to know about a sperm analysis before you get there? First of all, not all labs are the same. Please do not go to your standard like Dudley Handlers or Laverty or Sullivan Nicolaides. They're awesome labs for doing other tests, but they don't have entire andrology units working on sperm analysis. You want to actually go to an IVF lab. Now, don't be scared. Doesn't mean you're going to do IVF. It means you are going to the expert of analyzing sperm. Now, if you were to get, work with a PT, would you just go to any old PT that you see? No, you're going to look for the best one to match your needs, right? The same as anything. So you're going to take your car to a shitty mechanic and then trust his word? No, you're going to go to a great mechanic, right? So get a referral to an IVF lab because these are the people that will analyze the sperm in a way that is valid and you can make decisions off. So you can go through Medicare to do that, or you can pay privately to do that. Either way, it doesn't matter. But I'm telling you, the amount of men I've seen over the years that come in with their Dudley Handler sperm analysis and go, oh, I've got amazing swimmers. And I look at it and go, well, that just might as well just get rid of that and start again. So that's the first thing.
Is that just on that before you keep going? When it comes to that test, is it a different test? Or one of the things that I know is a recurring theme, and you and I were talking about this 12 years ago, but it's becoming common knowledge, is the health markers have been considerably dropped over the last 10, 20, 30 years. So are the Douglas Hannon groups literally going, well, you don't look like you're going to die, so you're okay? Or is it a different test that they're doing?
Well, IVF labs have more sophisticated equipment, for one.
Yeah.
But it's also the fact that in general, the recommended ranges have changed to accommodate the declines. So, for example, like per mil of ejaculate, what number is considered normal for the amount of sperm is, well, the World Health Organization say 15 million, right? Million sperm is okay. But that's not okay because we know from the research that it takes an average of 55 million sperm to get a fertilization, right? So normal is not always optimal. It simply means average. And I always say you do not want average sperm, right? You want way above average. So it's the fact that because of the drop in fertility across the board, they're moving the biomarker levels to accommodate for that. And like that to me is literally crazy. Like when we're looking at morphology, so the shape of the sperm, the benchmark in 1980 for this was 80%. You want 80% of the sperm analysis to have a correct morphology. One head, one midpiece, one tail. Now that number's 4%. So we've gone from 80% in 1980, so less than, we're saying 45 years. Now it's 4%. So if you do a sperm analysis and you're told, oh, you've got 4% morphology, yay, go and procreate. by today's standards, that's okay. But if that was in 1980, you would probably be sent to a specialist. So it's all relative, right? It's all relative. And that's why this opportunity to have a sperm analysis and to go, okay, what are my numbers and how can I optimize them is so incredibly great. Like, I really want, all the guys that are going to watch this to just realize it is an opportunity. Don't be scared of it.
So when, just so we walk through that process, first of all, so you go to a GP.
Yes.
Firstly, of which some GPs will tell you you're fine and may kick up resistance, which in itself can be fucking annoying, but we'll leave that for another day. So you go to the GP, say that you want to go to an IVF lab and get your sperm tested. Is there a certain test that these guys should be asking for? Like what's that process look like?
Yeah, great. Yeah. So basically you go to your GP and say, I'd like to have a sperm analysis. And they may say something along the lines of, well, have you been trying to have a child? And, you might say, no, I'm not there yet. I just want to have a sperm test. And they might say, well, if that's the reason, under Medicare, you're not covered for XYZ. And you say, that's cool. I've budgeted for that. I want to do it anyway. Please refer me. So you go there. Now, a standard sperm analysis, if we go through what they will test the motility, which is, are the sperm moving forward? They will also assess what's called the progressive motility, which is simply how quickly are they moving forward, right? You want them fast moving because they've actually got a very long way to go. People do not realize how small microscopic sperm are, and the egg that sperm needs to fertilize is all the way up in the fallopian tube, all the way through the vagina, through the uterus, all the way up into the fallopian tubes. It's a long way. A lot of sperm are going to die before they get there because they're not moving fast enough, right? So motility and progressive motility. Then they look at the morphology, right? Which is, what's the shape? Do they have two tails, two heads? What's it look like? Essentially, if a sperm that has poor morphology actually does fertilize an egg, that's going to result in an early miscarriage. It's not going to go anywhere, no matter how healthy that egg is, right? It is one of the reasons for miscarriage that we look out for. So you want to have good morphology. Then they can also do an additional test, which I always say, make sure you ask for this. It's called DNA fragmentation, right? And what this means, as I said, it's not always tested, but I always say you should ask for it because it's a critical marker of sperm health, the health of the DNA. It tells us how much of the DNA inside the sperm is broken or fragmented, right? The job of the sperm is to deliver the DNA to the egg. But if it's delivering fragmented or broken DNA, then that embryo won't progress, right? It just will not be a viable pregnancy. Now, 0 to 15% is normal for your DNA fragmentation. Anything over 25% is deemed as poor DNA fragmentation. And I absolutely say to my patients, if you have DNA fragmentation over 25%, you are not to try and conceive until we have fixed that and we've had a retest and we can see it's come down. Because the risk of miscarriage, it's just too high. And the emotional trauma that comes with that, I'm not willing to risk it, So, they're the baseline things that a sperm analysis will be covering. They'll also check the pH. They'll check whether there's any infections, white blood cells, basic stuff like that. But essentially, the sperm metrics is what we're really interested in.
So you mentioned there the DNA fragmentation, and you mentioned earlier that the sperm is it 96 days? Did I get that right?
Yeah, the average lifespan of a sperm.
Gotcha.
Yes.
So let's say that the DNA fragmentation is below 25%. Would you then put someone on a protocol for, obviously based on 96 days, a minimum of 3 months to improve their sperm health before they went back and retested? Is that kind of how you'd operate?
Yeah, that's right. So that whole preconception window for men is, 3 to 4 months. And the same for women. I prefer longer for women. But for men, we're dealing with something that's very functional. As the sperm are being made and they are exposed to the seminal fluid and the environment in the testes, all of those factors are going to be affecting the health of that sperm. So, you absolutely want to implement a protocol. We often bargain, negotiate whether it's 3 or 4 months. But, if I get 3 months, I'm happy. And then it's like, okay, yep, let's retest and see what's shifted and what's changed and then reassess.
So let's say me as a mature aged male in his late 30s wants to start prepping up for a baby, which I'm fascinated in this pre-trimester, which I don't think many blokes know or even consider, but I'm really starting to just do little things to improve.
Awesome.
What from a male point of view does a pre-trimester preparation start to look like?
Yeah. Okay. So really good question. And there's so many levers we can pull in this space. There can be some big ones, there can be some little ones, but whatever you're comfortable starting to tweak and change is what we want to do. First of all, we do want to think about what affects sperm in a bigger way, right? So what I mean by that is some medications affect sperm. So things like antibiotics can temporarily affect the ability of the sperm to be made. Steroids can reduce the concentration and the motility of sperm. So first of all, just kind of do a bit of a medication stock, talk to your GP, tell them that you're planning on future fertility, and if there's anything you're taking that could be affecting your sperm, what are the options? Obviously things like antibiotics are temporary. Steroids are sometimes a subtle one with a lot of men that they're actually been taking steroids for a long period of time. I've had 2 cases where the sperm count was zero, because he's been doing steroids, not telling the wife, and he's not producing sperm as a result. So steroids are actually a big one that I do ask really pointed questions about with clients, because I've just, there's nothing worse than a couple that's been trying to conceive for 12 months with no fertilizations, only to find out that he's been doing steroids on the side and didn't realize. That's pretty tragic. Yeah.
Just on that quickly, and I'll get you to keep going. Literally, as we're talking about this podcast will be out a bit later, but as we're talking about this, I've literally listened to Aubrey Marcus talk about this 2 days ago. And he was
really?
He was on TRT for 4 years.
Yeah.
And what he was doing, I think it was 200 milligram jab, and don't quote me on these numbers, but something like 200 milligram jab once a week. And that was, he had a guest on to talk about it. That was really messing with it. Changed it to smaller jabs more often, and it's meant that he was literally zero as well, and him and his partner are starting to kind of look into it. I don't necessarily recommend TRT, albeit there's some interesting research coming out, but he is now cycling 4 times a week on smaller cycles, and that is starting to bring it back, which is interesting. I'd obviously prefer to go off it completely if I was in his position, but each to their own. But it was really interesting that, for someone who's super healthy, actually just the testosterone replacement that he's on had brought it right down to zero. So it's a really interesting piece, that one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we've got drugs like minoxidil for hair loss. There's things that men don't realize, this could also be affecting my sperm, right? So, really go with a very, fine-tooth comb through any medications, pharmaceuticals that you're taking, and also supplements. People buying supplements online, you need to be triple checking everything in this preconception stage. It's really important. We've also got to look at the whole feminization of men with xenoestrogen exposure. This is one that's been going on for a long time, but the old man boob thing and impotence, and we kind of have a joke around it, but it doesn't have to be so bad that he's got man boobs and impotence. It could be just something that he's exposed to on a consistent basis. Maybe he's in sales and he's on the road a lot and he uses a plastic water bottle that gets heated up in the car all the time, right? It could be something like as small as that you can change and go, right, I'm going to buy a stainless steel water bottle. I'm going to drink filtered water. That's my tweak, right? But endocrine disrupting chemicals, they're things like BPA. These compounds mimic hormones in the body, and they're a huge factor in why we have these lower sperm counts that we're seeing. It is a bit of, as I said, there's a bit of a toxic soup out there. BPA is not just in plastic water bottles. It's kind of almost throughout the food chain now. So we also have to be thinking about our ability to process and detoxify these things out of our body. Essentially, part of any preconception plan should include cleaning up the diet and lifestyle, checking medications, but also doing a detox of some kind so that we can help excrete and chelate these types of chemicals from the body so that they're not affecting the production of sperm as much. But yeah, endocrine disrupting chemicals, big one, really big one.
On that exact piece, the man boob phenomenon that we've got at the moment, which at least in my world and probably a slight bias because I'm so interested in this topic, there's a lot of guys going, fuck, like I'm full of estrogen. So how easy is it to remove estrogen from the body? And you use the term chelate, which might be a new term for some people. How easy is it to remove estrogens from the bodies and then start to kind of jack that testosterone levels up, ideally naturally, which there's a number of basic factors that we can do there. But how easy is it to draw estrogens and bad estrogens out of a male body?
It can be easy or it can be difficult. So a lot of this is genetically determined. So we have our DNA that we're born with, like a blueprint, thanks mom, thanks dad. That DNA is going to code for how well we can detoxify things out of our body. So your liver has 2 phases of detoxification, and the enzymes involved in both those pathways, the level of those enzymes is pretty much genetically predetermined. So, you could be what we call a slow metabolizer, and that means that your body is being exposed to that toxic compound more repeatedly or for longer because you're slower at chelating it or getting it out of the body. Now, the liver has to process all your hormones, right? It goes down the same biochemical pathway that toxins do. So a lot of the time, the body is going to have to make a decision. Do I detoxify this hormone or do I detoxify this toxic compound? Over and over again, the body's going to choose the toxic compound over the hormone, which means that it's harder to get rid of estrogen if your body's so busy dealing with, chemicals, alcohol, caffeine, like all of those things. So we want to sort of lighten the load on all of those so that your body can spend more time chelating and getting out the estrogen. Estrogen detoxification also has a lot to do with your gut health. There's an enzyme in the colon called beta-glucuronidase, which essentially, if your liver's broken the estrogen down, right, and then it's dumped the end product into the gut to be excreted from the body. So you've made it all the way to the large colon, like it's about to be eliminated from the body. This enzyme beta-glucuronidase, it puts estrogen back together and back into circulation, and it's recycled around the body yet again. So your estrogen receptors are exposed to that estrogen molecule more than once. So gut health is so important in order for that enzyme level not to accumulate and then recycle the estrogen. So look, it comes down to your genes, your gut health, what your exposure rates are to these exogenous chemicals and things like phthalates, BPAs, So it depends on a lot. But as I said, any good preconception program, you need to do a detoxification of some kind. And I'm not saying it has to be like an air fast and, anything super crazy, but you really want to work on the gut and the liver health so that they can be optimized in their functioning.
So if we were talking, we'll say if we're talking preconception, if we were talking for the absolute basics and then someone who wanted to go like real gnarly to the extremes, I'm kind of interested in going to the extremes. What would your best bang for buck be at the kind of starting end in terms of just some basics? And what would be the finer details of someone who really wanted to fine tune it at the kind of more, I guess, extreme end of things?
Yeah, I think like your baseline really for anyone needs to be looking at your current diet and lifestyle habits, because most of us are sort of just on the wheel. And we don't really notice, and we're not super mindful of the little things we could be doing that are not supporting our health. It's a classic one. It's the alcohol intake. It's the caffeine intake. It's the sugar intake. Sugar is very pro-inflammatory. which is not going to be helpful from a sperm perspective. So first of all, start becoming aware of how much of those things you're consuming for a start. You know, if that means you need to keep a food diary for a week and start tracking things to get some real handle on the data, then do it. Because for a lot of people, you know, making small incremental changes is going to be a lot more feasible than to do a huge, big overhaul where it's really demanding, right? So first of all, you know, have a medication check, work out what you can, you know, swap out or get off or change so that the medications aren't affecting you as much. Look at your recreational drug use. You know, this is actually a big one. You know, we've got cigarettes, we've got vaping now as well. You know, vaping is more healthy, but not. Look at the alcohol intake. You know, without doing those things, I would be saying you can't start layering the fancy stuff on top unless you start looking at those basics first. Yeah, you know, the diet, what foods are going to support fertility is the next level after doing all of those things. So people think, oh, I just got to clean up my diet. It's like, no, that's sort of step 2. You need to do these basics first. Have a look as well about mobile phone exposure and EMF. This is huge, right? Huge. And you know, data is really clear on this. You know, results of human research shows that human sperm exposed to EMFs have decreased motility, they have morphology issues, they have increased oxidative stress. Sperm are very sensitive to oxidative stress, right? That's why you produce, you know, 200 million of them when you only need one, because a lot of them are going to die from oxidative stress. It's really that simple. And, you know, EMF exposure comes from computers, laptops, mobile phones, Wi-Fi, AirPods, cell phone towers, like smart meters. We are constantly being bombarded with EMF. So we need to reduce our exposure to that. And research on men using mobile phones showed that they have decreased sperm concentration, so they're producing less, they have slower sperm, and they have decreased viability, like they just don't get the results, right? And these abnormalities are increased, they're directly related to the duration of mobile phone use. So the more you're using your mobile, right, the more your sperm concentration is going to come down. And men are always, very often, they're keeping their mobile phone in their pocket right near their testicles.
That's my next question.
Please, men, do not keep your phone in your pocket. Like, I don't know, it's just the logical place to put your phone, but look at the location. The other thing you've got to think about is that, you know, your testicles hang outside your body for a reason, because it's cooler outside your body than in your body. So heat is also going to affect sperm. And so if you've got a mobile phone in a pocket, that's going to also be heating up the area. So you've got to get those mobile phones out of pockets, right? Stay out of saunas. Stop riding your bike all the time. Like, you need to cool down everything.
I've heard a pretty alternative approach of
Ice.
Yes.
Bath.
Yes. So not only ice bath, but there's a couple of guys. There's a guy in Australia actually who's getting a lot of traction at the moment for jacking testosterone numbers up in a natural way. But also Ben Greenfield talks about this in America, of ice in your balls, like 3 or 4 times a day. That's wild, and I'm actually keen to try it out.
There's underwear called snowballs. So maybe try that.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm checking it out. So on the more extreme end, we're definitely going to have to do another episode because I'm just getting started and we're running tough for time. Snowballs, underwear. On the other end, the kind of more, I guess, left of center type approaches, if people feel like, cool, got the diet down, got the, you know, the health down, even things like medication, what they're putting on their skin, you know, trying to go natural. I finally found a natural deodorant that works when 25 other ones didn't. So
which one? Give it some airtime.
It's called, I forgot the name of it. It's called.
Put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I have to put it in the show notes. But I bought 10 of them because I had to get it from America. But it's unbelievable. And like, as someone who, Native, check it out. Native. Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's the only one I found that works. Good plug. On the other end of the scale, if you kind of want to really fine tune, what are some of the things that you could consider? One of the things that we changed recently was filtering our shower head.
Yes.
We filter the water already, but filtering our shower head. But what are some of the kind of more left of center things that people could consider if they're looking to really tighten it up?
Yeah, look, I definitely think that if you don't use filters, then you become the filter, right? Think of it that way. So water filters, shower filters, also air purifiers. So in my house, for the last 20 years, I've had HEPA air filters going 24/7. And that might make me sound like a nut job, but I live in Sydney. I live near a main road. We know that the lead levels are higher because of the exhaust. Heavy metals are a huge issue from a fertility aspect. There was a lot of research done on this in the late 90s and on hair analysis. So you can do hair samples to assess for heavy metal levels. And if you're reducing your heavy metals, fertility rates go up. So this, again, is one of those ubiquitous exposures. We're just exposed to the air we breathe. But if you have a good HEPA air filter that you leave on 24/7, if you filter out the chemicals in your tap water, one thing that I do say about tap water that just makes sense is that our council, our government, have to put a whole shitload of antibacterial stuff in the water so we don't get sick, right? Makes sense.
Yep.
But what else is that killing in our gut? Is that not impacting our microbiome? It's antimicrobial, antibiotic. So we don't want to be putting that in our body, right? So filtered water, shower filters. Showers are an interesting one because, we usually have hot showers. So a lot of the fumes, we're vaporizing fluoride, chlorine, and so we're breathing them in straight into the lungs, across the barrier, into the blood and in our body and sequestered in our body then, right? Which means that we need to then be efficient at getting them out of the body. And if our body is busy dealing with all the other stuff we're exposed to, what do? Our safety mechanism is to hide these chemicals, these heavy metals, these toxins, hide them in organs, bones, hair, because if we leave them in the bloodstream, it's toxic, right? So where we can start getting things like fatty liver, like all kinds of stuff. So I would definitely be looking at, air quality, water quality. This is when I'll be doing a sperm analysis and asking for the DNA fragmentation. I would also be looking at gut optimization as well. When we're looking at the liver, the gut, we really want to comprehensively optimize those. From a naturopathic perspective, that's, eat this therapeutic foods that are great for that sort of stuff, but we actually need to be on really good quality herbal medicines like St. Mary's thistle, Schizandra, globe artichoke, dandelion root to really help open up those pathways of detoxification from that aspect. So, look, one thing that sperm respond to really well is all of this kind of work. The literature is very clear on the impact of antioxidants on sperm health. Antioxidants increase sperm vitality, sperm health. So this is where the next level I would go to a therapeutic supplementation protocol where you've got things like, ubiquinone, vitamin C, vitamin E, like you've got a whole heap of antioxidants that, I don't want people to go take a whole heap of antioxidants like they're chucking it at the wall and hope something sticks. But, vitamin C, like research shows 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day helps optimize sperm health. How easy is that to do, right? That's not hard. It's good for your immune system, like blah, blah, blah. Like why wouldn't you do it, right? And then, look, I often will go into DNA testing with patients as well, looking at those pathways in the liver around their detoxification. One of the big things I haven't talked about is this whole topic, which is like jungle, but a whole topic called methylation. So methylation is really complex, but essentially it is the process by which our DNA replicates and repairs. And it's really important. If you think about sperm, they're fast-moving, fast turnover cells. We want our methylation to be as healthy as possible because that's what's going to code for how healthy that sperm becomes. So looking at methylation pathways and liver detoxification pathways are also really important when you're getting up to that sort of, more complex stuff.
Em, we could talk for at least another 5 or 6 hours.
Of course.
I'm mindful of time, which means I definitely, if you're up for it, definitely need to get you back on because I feel like we just started. For those who want to explore you, the work that you do, even probably get your help to optimize themselves for fertility, where's the best spot for them to find you?
Easy. It's studiou.com.au, studio-you.com.au. Contact me on my socials. Maybe I'll put together a bit of a handout for the show notes just on foods that can help and just some starting tips so that you can all kind of walk away with a bit of action stations on the basics.
Yeah, that'd be unreal. I think people could definitely do with that. So good to talk, and I'm holding you to your word on getting you back on so we can continue this conversation. But good to get the ball rolling and give people insight into this thing that is becoming pretty scary if we don't turn things around.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're shining a light on it. Thank you.